Hello and welcome to our webinar. Our topic for today is skills assessment in the classroom. And just not to waste any more time, I'm going to share my screen with you and we are going to try and talk to you about the topic that brings us here today. So to talk about skills assessment in the classroom, we are going first of all to talk about types and purpose of assessment. And then we are going to talk about classroom assessment tools. Next, we are going to talk about classroom assessment tasks. And we are going to wrap everything up by talking about how you can differentiate your students using assessment in the classroom. So for a start, we should perhaps try to focus on what assessment must always be. This, I'm sure, is not new information for you. You are all aware of these three major characteristics that classroom assessment must have, but nevertheless, let's just do some topic review. So assessment must always be fair. And by fair, we mean that we have to make sure that tasks and criteria allow the students the same opportunities in the classroom, the same opportunities for learning and the same opportunities to improve their learning. And then we must always have assessment in line with learning goals. Well, for a start and for one, by making tasks, learning tasks and assessment tasks as far as possible relating to real life and to communicative situations, but also by making sure that we assess what we actually teach, and that is very important. And then assessment should always and must also be relevant. And by relevant assessment, we mean that it must assess what is taught, as I said before, and it must focus on what students know and on what they can do. There's no point in assessing just to find out what the students don't know. Assessment must always focus on what they know, and we should be able to withdraw information and collect information about their learning process and their learning quality, because we have to do something. We have to make sure that after that, they are going to get information also about what they did as far as assessment is concerned. So for assessment, we have two major dimensions that we can use in the classroom. And these dimensions are universal as far as assessment goes. You can have formative assessment and you can have summative assessment. Formative assessment is always focused on what you do in the classroom and on what and how you do to develop the learning and to improve the learning process of your students. So formative assessment is all that you do to collect information, to always be collecting information about what they know, what they should know, and what they should be doing to know better and to do better. And in this perspective, you can have formal assessment or informal assessment. So formal, because you can have and you can establish, precise and prepared moments for you to collect that information, or you can do it by observation in the course of your lessons. When you want to understand how a unit has been appropriated by your students, or if you want to certify a school year or a cycle of learning, then you are talking about summative assessment. And summative assessment is always formal and is also determined to happen in a specific point in time with very, very similar conditions for every student. We are, most of the times we teachers have problems understanding in practice how to deal with these aspects of assessment. I am going to show you a video by a specialist in these matters that speaks for itself and that will tell you much better than I what formative assessment is and what it should be.
One of the things that comes up when you get into a differentiated class, let alone one that's standards-based, is you have to begin to weigh formative versus summative assessment. Now, summative assessment is actually anticlimactic. It really refers to post-learning, after all is said and done. So it's a final declaration. Usually there's not a lot of capacity to go back and revise one's efforts and be assessed and accredited anew. But one thing that teachers forget is that something that was intended to be summative, child does poorly for whatever reason, you're allowed to make it a formative assessment. Something that was summative now becomes formative. That's actually okay. It's within your prerogative. But what about formative assessment? Well, of the two, teachers tend to spend the majority of their time designing their summative assessments, as if that was the most important aspect. But really, it's formative assessment. That's the most important aspect. It has the greatest impact on student achievement, on feedback to the teacher, everything. The whole enterprise of teaching and learning really boils down to that formative assessment. Can kids learn without grades? Yeah. Can they learn without formative assessment and the feedback that comes from it? Not at all. So we want to emphasize that. In fact, I would suggest that teachers spend at least the same amount of time, if not more, designing formative assessment instead of summative assessment. But what is this formative assessment? Well, formative assessment obviously is the ongoing assessment. It's the checkpoints along the way. But here's the kicker. The best formative assessment actually involves descriptive feedback. Not just, hey, thank you for finishing on time. No, it was you had your supplies, you were able to do this and this and this, and that helps all of us. It's kind of like Jim Fay in his Love and Logic books, Point and Describe. National Association of Secondary School Principals and many other folks who are into assessment talk about three aspects of descriptive feedback. You help the kid discover, or you point it out yourself, what was the goal, what was the original intent, the objective, where are you in relation to it, and what are we going to do to close that gap? Three different parts of good descriptive feedback. When a kid can take that and use it, we find that formative assessment is any assessment that's done where the kid is allowed to revise his efforts in light of that feedback and then be assessed and accredited anew. Perhaps there's some relearning in there as well, but it's ongoing, and that's the focus. If our focus is summative assessment, students don't learn as well. Dylan William, one of the great researchers in this, he did this wonderful manifesto, Inside the Black Box, with Paul Black. And man, it turned America on its ear. In 1998, we started looking at formative assessment and started transforming schools. So how do we give feedback to kids? Is there formative assessment in my lesson plans? In great lessons, I should be able to circle the formal formative assessment and feedback going to students. There's also informal, where you observe, maybe get some feedback right there in the spur of the moment. But I should see lots of checks for understanding and kids getting that feedback. In fact, Bob Marzano and many others talk about the effect size, the impact of some decision. And it turns out the effect is much greater if you do an assessment and there's going to be descriptive feedback. If there's no feedback, it turns out the assessment, the tasks, the assignments don't have much instructional value compared to when there's feedback. So in the same planning breath, as I design my assessment, I'm going to design how will students get feedback on this, and how will it inform my lessons. In fact, I should be able to walk down a hallway and stop a teacher cold. They don't know I'm coming. They don't know the question's coming. And say, how did formative assessment inform one of your decisions today or this week with a student, a subset of students, or a class? And the teacher should feel very comfortable. I found out this about these students. I decided to do that. That's one of the big pillars of differentiated instruction. And it turns out classrooms where teachers focus on formative assessment, test scores go up if you use that as an indicator. But really, mastery, student achievement, It all goes up. And again, I wonder, what goes unlearned because a teacher didn't get into, didn't understand, didn't apply formative assessment principles?
So we're going back, and we're going back to where we were, and I'm going to show you again what I have to tell you, but I think it's important to make a point of what Rick Wormelli just told us. 2 or 3 very important things: the importance of feedback and of descriptive feedback. It is very important that the kids understand very clearly through descriptive feedback where they need to improve and how they can improve. The other thing is you don't learn from grades. You learn from this descriptive feedback that is given to you. A grade in itself doesn't activate learning. You don't learn better because you have an 86 or a 78 in a test. And then there is another aspect that he implicitly mentioned, which is simplicity. The simpler you do it, the more effective it is. And bearing that in mind, I would like to go on talking to you about this. So just to wrap it up and to sum up, when you talk about formative assessment, you talk about feedback and rewind. So it's the opportunity you have to move forward, but move forward with enough information to improve. You don't move forward because you have to move forward. You don't leave anyone behind. Summative assessment is when you score and move on, but you don't go back. So in summative assessment, you don't have that aspect of let's go back and make better what should be better. You don't have that possibility. So in terms of what the major dimension of assessment that you work in the classroom, I mean, there is no choice. There is no alternative because summative assessment doesn't improve teaching. Formative assessment does. So what formative assessment is focused on learning goals, is a source of information about what the student knows, and adapted to students' learning styles. And this is very important because I'm going to show you something just after this. And what it isn't, for sure, it's not a special kind of test. It's not the test that you apply before the summative test, and it's not something separate from the teaching and learning process, should I say. So formative assessment really is in terms of elements and main elements. So it's about shared learning targets, criteria for success, and you are going to watch a situation where that is clearly stated. Feedback that feeds forward. It's about student goal setting. It's about student self-assessment. What am I doing that I should be doing better than this? And the core questions are, where am I now? Where am I going? And what strategy or strategies can help me get where I need to go? So if I just asked you a very, very simple question. So which of the following activities do you think can be best suited for formative assessment? And if I ask you to name 3 and to think about 2 reasons for your choice, and you're doing it just as I speak. So you are listening to this, you are looking at this list: portfolios, tests, learning logs, reports, oral presentations, role plays, essay videos, interviews, a class online magazine. So which of these 3 would I choose for formative assessment, and why would I do it? Because we don't have much time and this is not really interactive, what I really can tell you about is summative versus formative assessment, same tasks or same formats, but different purposes. You could have chosen any instrument from that list or any task from that list for summative assessment or formative assessment, because what matters is the purpose you implement it. So if it has a formative purpose, good. If it has a summative purpose, okay. But you can use either. There is no difference in the tools and tasks and instruments that you implement to differentiate summative or formative assessment. The big difference is the purpose you are going to use the results. Formative assessment and differentiated learning. This is very important because we have been listening about differentiated learning for a long time. And there are a lot of preconceived ideas about differentiated learning that sometimes prevent us from doing differentiated learning in the classroom. I'm going to try to, deconstruct some of those preconceived ideas and try to show you how it can be much simpler than people think it is. So first of all, assessment is embedded in the curriculum. And being embedded in the curriculum, the point is you don't have curriculum development and then assessment. You do it as a process. And because of that, of course, differentiation is embedded in assessment. Of course it is. It should be. There is no formative assessment without differentiation. And this is also very important. When you do formative assessment, you are focusing on your students. And by focusing on your students' needs, you are differentiating, but you are not doing it, and you don't have to do it in such a way that you have to attend to every student individually in a separate way. So what is differentiation and what is not differentiation? So what I can tell you is, and you are going to have access to all this, I'm not going to read it all to you, but differentiation is not just for students with labels. I mean, this student is a very, very, very good and proficient student, so he or she needs different tasks, or this student has lots of problems by learning things. So I have to give him or her differentiated tasks. It's not how it works. Differentiation is for every student and is at the core of effective planning. It's not the extra thing you do in the curriculum. So basically what you need to think is that when you plan your teaching process, you plan for differentiation. You don't do it afterwards or as an extra. It focuses on individuals, okay, but it can be focused on small groups and the class as a whole. It doesn't have to deal with a student at a time. It would be impossible for us to do that. So you have to think, this is what I'm going to teach. This is what I'm going to work with my students. Who do I think, with my knowledge of my class and my students, who do I think is going to struggle more or less with this topic or with this situation? And this way, if you think in advance, you can prepare for it. So it doesn't have to be for student A, B, or C. It can be for the whole class. It can be between classes. It's you, with the knowledge you have of your students, who decide that. And as I told you, it's not about extra work. It's embedded in the process. It is something that happens when there is a need for it. So if you don't have any perspective that students are going to struggle in the process of learning something, then it's okay. You don't have to do anything special about it. So it's not something that you have to be doing all day, every day. You do it when you need it. And it is something that you think in advance. And that this is very important. The fact that you think about your students and you prepare for the problems that may appear or may occur. And you're the only one who can do that, because you're the person who really knows the students and really is into and has privileged knowledge of what their learning process is. And when we plan in advance and when we prepare in advance, this has something to do, or a lot to do, should I say, with sometimes a very simple approach to learning styles. You all, I'm sure, have heard about Howard Gardner and multiple intelligences and learning styles. So if you look at your classes and at your students, you know that there are students that are more visual than others. They learn by seeing, and some are better or learn better when they learn by hearing. Some are really linguistic and they learn by reading and by writing, and some are the practical ones. They learn by doing. So one way of differentiating is to find and prepare tasks that target at some points these different learning styles. You don't always do the same. You don't always do reading and writing. You have to address all the other learning styles and dominant learning styles that you have in the classroom. So this is also one way of differentiating. As I told you, I was going to show you I would show you situations, practical situations, when you can see these principles in action. So I'm going to show you another video, and this video is about two classrooms, one with 5-year-olds and another one with 10-year-olds, and you are going to see it all in action. How to differentiate, how to establish criteria for success, how to give feedback, descriptive feedback for the students, how you can make opportunities and prepare opportunities for student self and peer assessment. So this is a very, very rich video, and I'm sure you'll find some good ideas to use in your classroom.
Well, there have been many studies over the years that have shown that most marking has very little impact on children's progress. So for some time we've been looking at how to make the feedback more immediate, how to involve the children throughout a lesson in giving feedback to each other, in thinking about their own achievements and where they could improve. So what we have is we're heading towards constant review in the classroom. Children constantly stopping and looking at where they've been successful, where their best bits are, where the excellence is, and where and how they could improve. Good learning, it is about moving forward, about saying, how could I make this even better? So that there's always this quest for improvement. Finally, Katie models the success and achievement approach using a visualizer, and pink for best bits and green for improvements. Then we see, up close, pairs cooperatively improving each other's work. Notice the true collaboration between the children.
When I was trying to build a sandcastle, I saw 3 greedy, mischievous seagulls fighting over a discarded bag of chips. I was laughing for a while until I made a massive sandcastle right next to the sea. Mum said that she could see it from where she was, so we put a flag on it and took a picture of it. Okay, turn to your talking partner. Which elements really focus in, which words, which phrases do we think are really good description that you want underlined? Yes, Daniel. Okay, yeah, well, I think quite a few of us picked up on that. Why do you like the greedy, mischievous seagulls? Okay, so why is it good that he's used those adjectives?
Well, it shows that they're mischievous, they're not just nice birds.
Right.
They're mischievous, it shows what sort of birds they are.
Okay, yeah, we found out a little bit more, okay, about the birds. I'm going to underline then the greedy, mischievous seagulls. What I really like there as well with Daniel, he hasn't said the whole sentence that those few words are in, okay, he's really focused in on those those key words that he thinks are really good, and that's what I wanted to try and do. Well done, Daniel. Okay. I now want you to have a look at this paragraph, and I want you to think, is there a section that actually Jack maybe could improve a little bit? Okay. We're not criticising Jack for his work. We're saying, yeah, we really like these sections, but actually we'd like to help you make this section even better. Any other offers on describing the sea, Elijah?
The aqua.
The aqua, do you mean? Aqua blue sea, maybe aqua blue sea, possibly. Charlie, are you still on the sea? No, I'll come back to you then. Yeah.
Cobalt blue.
The cobalt blue sea, okay. Jack, what would you like?
I like aqua.
Aqua. Okay, so aqua blue sea, okay. Any other offers?
It's as soft as a new tent. I like that one. If we're doing this paragraph, that's paragraph to show. Just like culminate. Then, right, so what bit do you like? Unfortunately. Fair goal. About the odd terrified scream.
Describe better than the sea. Get something like the
wavy sea, the blue wavy sea.
yeah, the sky blue wavy sea.
Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed watching this video as much as I did. It's really interesting the way you see all those principles in action, and the way it all seems simple and not so difficult to do. And bearing in mind that these are two classrooms from just normal state schools and normal kids, average kids. So it's possible to do it with every student in every context. I hope you've enjoyed. There is a list of references that you may find interesting to look into or to look for. And this not so interesting times, should I say, my hope is that you are and keep on being safe, keep yourself safe and in good health. Thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing you and meeting you in a much more warm and personal interactive situation. Bye-bye.